I'm Haley B. Miller, and this is Ohio Politics Explained, a podcast where you give us 15 minutes and we give you all the news you need to sound smart and impress your friends.
Welcome back to another episode of Ohio Politics Explained. I'm Anthony Shoemaker, in this week for Haley B. Miller. We have a lot to talk about this week, including Ohio's new restrictions on THC drinks and hemp products, Governor candidate Vivek Ramaswamy's idea to consolidate state universities, how JobsOhio has been tied up in the controversial resignation of Ohio State's president, and what dog owners need to know about the new vicious dog law that's going into effect. Joining me this week is State Bureau reporter Laura Bischoff. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Anthony.
So as of this recording, Ohio businesses won't be able to sell hemp-infused THC drinks or gummies after advocates failed to get the signatures they needed to block a law that's set to go into effect March 20th. There are a few lawsuits floating around to try to stop the law from taking place. But Governor DeWine, signed the bill back in December. And, he had a veto on that bill that also bans the sale of popular THC drinks outside of licensed dispensaries. This has become big business for Ohio breweries and stores. Laura, what's this going to mean for those businesses?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of like beer and wine shops and that will serve it at your table or to go as carry out these THC drinks. They are really popular. And this is something that Mike DeWine has really kind of put a red line against. He used his line item veto to take that piece out of the bill. I think the lawmakers had crafted a compromise to allow the sales to continue through the end of the year, and then that would have given time to see if the federal government took any action on this. But he, struck it out, and getting on the ballot for to do a referendum, which is essentially asking the voters, do you want to enact this law or do you want to block this law? It's a big, heavy lift. The last time we had a statewide referendum on a law was in 2011 for Senate Bill 5. That was the collective bargaining law that John Kasich and his administration pushed through.
Oh, wow. That's been a while.
Yeah, and that was actually successful. The unions fought against it, and I remember when they turned in the truckload of signatures. It was just like semi-truck after semi-truck. It was a big show of force, and it kind of demonstrates what you need in order to get a referendum organized and on the ballot. Yeah,
and this law also makes some other changes to the marijuana issue that Ohio voters passed in 2023. Just so everyone knows, this also prohibits people from possessing marijuana purchased at a dispensary outside of the state. It requires people, if they go to a dispensary and buy marijuana, they have to now keep the items in their trunk in the original packaging. And it also bans smoking and vaping of marijuana anywhere except in private residences, which goes further than the tobacco ban we passed a couple decades ago.
Yeah, the indoor smoking ban happened, I think, in 2006.
Yeah. Wow, it's been 20 years. Governor candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, the Republican frontrunner, floated an idea this week to consolidate Ohio universities to pay for eliminating the state income tax. He said the state has too many colleges and they would operate better if they became what he called centers of excellence. Laura, we've had situations where past governors actually wanted Ohio to increase the number of colleges. So this is a change.
Yeah, I think, back in the day, Jim Rhodes, Republican, who served, I think, 3 terms, he wanted to expand the number of public universities so that there were regional ones and everyone could get to a university, without having to move away from home. Ramaswamy, of course, wants to consolidate. And I'd like to point out that there's just no way you could make up for the loss of the income tax, like eliminating the income tax entirely. I don't think that would consolidating universities would necessarily accomplish that. And then also I would say that this consolidation plan, if I was Central State University or a big supporter of that university, I'd be pretty worried because that is a small, historically black college in Wilberforce over in Greene County, and they've had a lot of fiscal problems and as well as physical plant problems. And it's been on a fiscal watch for a while.
Yeah, in Ohio, we always hear about the large universities, but Ohio has 14 public universities, 24 regional branch campuses, 22 community colleges. So these are also large employers in a lot of these communities where they're located. Dr. Amy Acton, the Democratic candidate running against Ramaswamy in the governor's race, jumped on his comments. She was praising colleges for the roles they play and the jobs they create and the athletes that come out of them. You know, Ohio's been a red state for a long time, Laura, and the last time we had a Democratic governor was Ted Strickland 20 years ago. But the polls are showing a competitive race for governor this year. How are things standing with the governor race?
Yeah, I mean, some polls show that Amy Acton has a lead, but I would also note that the election is quite a ways away, and we've not seen, the big infusion of money that will help shape the messages and influence how voters view the two candidates.
Yeah, and it's a good time to remind people that, there are primary elections this year in May, and the deadline to register to vote or change your voter registration is quickly approaching. Will be on April the 6th, and early voting for the May election starts on April the 7th. Laura, I wanted to talk about JobsOhio a little bit. They've been in the news recently, tied to the resignation of Ohio State President Ted Carter. Carter resigned from Ohio State March 7th after officials said he disclosed an inappropriate relationship tied to a person hosting a podcast, and JobsOhio spent $60,000 on this podcast, which seems like a lot of money for a podcast. What's going on?
Yeah, that is a lot of money for a podcast. This podcast is being produced for a shoelace.
And we're not getting $60,000.
No, we're not getting $60,000. I would say that the podcast was going to be produced at the studios of WOSU, the public media station that's attached to Ohio State. And only one of the 4 episodes were produced. And so JobsOhio is going to try and claw back some of that money. And then also this podcaster who apparently had the relationship with Carter. Carter introduced her to, JobsOhio leadership, the director of Veterans Affairs for the state. And they were at a Student Veterans Association conference together. And I think there's just like a lot of ways in which Carter used his position to advance her interests. And that is kind of the crux of why he resigned.
And while $60,000 is a lot for a podcast, it's not a lot of money for JobsOhio. JobsOhio doled out more than $164 million in 2023, according to a story we had this week from Haley B. Miller, and spent more than $240 million in 2024. Despite all this money, Laura, we can't really get all the details on how JobsOhio works. Yeah,
that's by design. When the Kasich administration set up JobsOhio as a private nonprofit back in like 2011, 2012, he said he wanted to move at the speed of business, and he didn't want it to be, bogged down by bureaucracy and public employees and ethics laws and open records laws. And so we don't have much transparency. Really, the only things that we can see from JobsOhio is whatever they decide to tell the public. And then also whatever is reported on the 990 form, which is filed with the IRS. That really lags. You don't get the 990 is not current information. It lags by about 18 months.
And, after this whole incident happened with Ohio State, former Governor Kasich went on social media and, was a little bit critical of JobsOhio over the podcast. But then current Attorney General Dave Yost kind of snapped back and told Governor Kasich to kind of look in the mirror because he's responsible for setting JobsOhio up the way it was.
Right. John Kasich put it on X that he thought it was mission drift to be funding this podcast, and it's not what he thought was the core mission of JobsOhio. And Yost, who when he was the state auditor, he fought to try to make sure that the books would be open for JobsOhio, and there was a big pushback from the Kasich administration on that front.
Laura, there's a Democratic candidate running for Attorney General this year who's filed a complaint asking the State Inspector General to investigate JobsOhio and Ted Carter. What is going on with that?
Yeah, John Kulowitz, he's in a primary race, Democratic primary against former lawmaker Elliott Foran. And Kulwitz is a retired attorney. He was a partner at Voorhees. He filed a complaint with the State Inspector General's office. The Inspector General has limited authority to investigate employees of JobsOhio, but only if he receives a complaint that is not anonymous. So it's a narrow little path. And so anyway, Kulwitz said that, based on the public reporting and the $60,000, that he thought there could be a chance of waste, fraud, and abuse, and that it should be investigated. Both Ohio State University, Ted Carter, the podcaster, and JobsOhio and its people.
Finally, Laura, Ohio's new vicious dog law takes effect March 20th, and the law is named after Avery Russell, a courageous young girl who was attacked by 2 pit bulls in 2024. Laura, your work investigating dog attacks in Ohio led to this change in the law that's been a long time coming. Tell us a little bit about it and what the law would actually do.
Well, it gives a lot more clarity to the dog wardens, saying that they can go ahead and impound a dog immediately following a serious attack rather than allowing it to stay with the owner. And that was sort of important for a lot of neighborhoods. It kind of, there's been this horrible attack, and yet the dog is still living at home with its owners. So that's going to be changed. And then generally speaking, there's going to be more accountability for owners of dogs that know that their dog has aggressive tendencies. They'll be obligated to keep their dog away from anybody who is invited onto their property. So this is not like the Amazon delivery person who comes up to the front porch. This is I'm having guests over, or kids are coming over to play, and I know my dog is aggressive. I have to put it in a bedroom or a locked kennel or elsewhere so that, the invitees and the dog cannot come together. And then also it's just, it eliminates this weird quirk that had been in state law that allowed a dog a free pass even after killing a human being. So now it's going to mandate euthanasia of a dog that carries out a serious attack on a human being, like one that causes severe injuries or kills a person.
Well, great work on that, Laura. It's been just a very strong project and will really make a difference. Well, it's been a busy week. That's all we got. We'll check out with you next week.